I've become interested in South African history over the last few days, given some of the events that have been transpiring in the country. If you haven't been keeping up with the news, I'll get you up to speed real quick. This gentleman, Jacob Zuma, was the president of South Africa until February 14th of 2018 when he resigned. He was replaced the next day by this gentleman pictured here, Cyril Ramaphosa, who wanted to redistribute land from white farmers. And he did just that in Parliament. Just a few days ago, he made this address after they voted to seize land from white farmers without compensation. I'll let him speak.
On Tuesday, South Africans, through their publicly elected representatives in Parliament, voted overwhelmingly in support of a motion to accelerate equitable land redistribution through expropriation of land without compensation.
This is an interesting decision to me. And the reason it's an interesting decision is because South Africa has a long and treacherous history with racial discrimination. Of course, then it was apartheid, and it was racial discrimination against black people. And of course, the justification for this behavior is that we're correcting the mistakes of apartheid. But it's an odd decision because I would think that after you've abolished the idea that certain races are inferior to other races and deserve to be treated with legal inferiority, I would think that you would then not make that same mistake with, the other way around. But that same mistake has obviously been made. There's another gentleman who's been making some waves named Julius Malema. And this is his quote right here: "We are not calling for the slaughter of white people, at least for now." So he's a radical Marxist. It says it right there. Radical Marxist opposition leader. He's the founder of this party known as the Economic Freedom Fighters. The Economic Freedom Fighters is a South African revolutionary socialist political party. So it didn't take a hell of a lot of digging to find this. I was wondering why it was that a country would go straight from racial discrimination against one race to racial discrimination against another race. And I figured that it had something to do with a little bit of cultural Marxism and some leftist ideas, and I was absolutely correct. This gentleman, who I talked about earlier, Cyril Ramaphosa, and his predecessor, Jacob Zuma, and his predecessor, and his, Nelson Mandela, were all part of the same party. And in spite of the fact that it had a lot to do with the destruction of apartheid back in the early 90s, which was absolutely a good for the world, because apartheid was a brutal legal system that never should have existed, and the destruction of which was a great moral good. It's being reestablished, except the roles have been reversed, it seems, given the recent news. As you can see, the African National Congress has, since its conception, has been the dominant party in South Africa. And it is a socialist party. It's also a black nationalist party, as you can see right here. It's part of this alliance, this tripartite alliance between itself and the South African Communist Party and the Congress of South African Trade Unions. The Communist Party and the African National Congress have been the two of the larger influencing forces in South African politics since then. So that sort of explains what I was looking for, because it seems like an odd decision to immediately go from, in less than just a few decades, to go from horrible racial discrimination against one group to beginning to racially discriminate against another group. But when you believe that that's a legitimate correction, then I suppose how you could, you understand at least what the philosophy underlying is here. I'm just going to tell you, this is my opinion now, that what's going to happen is not going to end well. As it stands, white farmers own, it'll probably say in one of these articles, they own a majority of the land in South Africa. And yeah, here we go. White people own 72% of the farmland. That's in 2017. So we're going to seize all of the land from white farmers, which is 72% of the land. How that's going to be accomplished without a civil uprising, I'm not sure. But I would not be surprised at all if a civil war erupts in South Africa, or if all of the white farmers, or at least many of them, just bail on the country, which a lot of them I guarantee you will, and they've begun to. So, this doesn't seem to me to be a very good solution at all. The best solution would, of course, just be racial equality. But when you can get away with discriminating against a race, it seems as though people have a tendency to do it.